Okay, welcome everybody. Before we start going through the critical incident management webinar, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're all calling from this evening and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome everybody, and thanks for taking the time to join us in this critical incident management webinar titled The Official's Response. The course content is designed to give you a better understanding of where you may fit into the bigger picture by identifying terminology and definitions of various roles, leadership and management roles and principles, where to get the information from, stress management principles, not only for you as an individual, but for the team that you may be working with, and what steps to take leading into the legal process. Before I hand over to our fabulous presenters, just go through some housekeeping items. So the course is designed for approximately 2 hours, and we've allocated time at the end of the course for questions. However, questions can be submitted by selecting the Q&A screen at the bottom of your screens, entering the question, and those questions will be answered live by myself, David Murray, and Nigel Fall, one of our other facilitators. I'd like to ask all members that are part of this forum to keep your questions relevant to the topics being discussed in this forum. And as I mentioned, questions will be answered live throughout the forum by Nigel and myself. And there's also time allocated at the end of the forum. Before we hand over to the presenters, I'd like to put out a massive thanks to Paul Reardon, our Motorsport Australia Media Manager, for putting this webinar together. Thank you very much, Paul. It's appreciated by myself, all the presenters, and I'm sure all of the participants attending. Our presenters tonight are the fabulous Dave Wood, Paul Overall, Campbell Smith, and Malcolm Bartolo. I'll hand over to them now to kick off this webinar, and I hope you all enjoy the experience. Over to you, Dave.
Yeah, all right. All right, just before we sort of start on it, what I'd like to do is, firstly, is to thank a couple of people for their input, even though they're not on the as facilitators for it. But I'd like to thank Anthony Jenkins from the Victorian Police Force, and he's also a member of the, as official, he's there. The next one is Bill Crouch, who is also ex-South Australian Police Force, and the next one is Andrew Lake, who currently is a senior sergeant, I believe, in the Queensland Police Force. They have provided some of the information for us, and you'll see as we go through. But thank you very much for all their help there. Right. Now, whilst this topic is delivered during the silver module, it is worthwhile reminding participants of the required standard of consistency, interpretation, and implementation whilst evaluating these incidents. This workshop has been designed to enhance and expand your discipline-specific knowledge and skill set with regards to critical incident management process and response. Learning objectives, and we'll just go down through that. First one is critical incident terminologies and definition. Hopefully we will, with those, we will all use the same terminology. And I know it may vary between each sport, rally, race and stuff like that. But if we all sort of use the same terminology, it makes life ever so much easier. Next one is team management or leadership and management, and principles in the event of a critical incident. We've added crash tag to that, and that's now we would use that as an assistant for our reporting packages. and we will lead you into that crash tag later on in the presentation. Effective stress management principles, and we will also, that will be covered in more in depth as we go through the presentation, and also the potential legal process, which is very important that we understand if we're involved in something, a critical incident, and we do have to eventually go to court or something like that, and we'll explain that process to you. Right. I'd like to hand over to Campbell Smith.
Good evening, everybody. So I will take you through what is a critical incident. The declaration of a critical incident is made by the event organisers, typically the clerk of course, usually on the advice of the most senior medical officer present. Critical incident involves the following criteria: a fatality to a competitor, crew member, official or spectator as a result of a motorsport incident. A significant injury to a member of the public, or a serious critical injury to any person, including a member of the public, which may result in death. So continuing on, a critical incident, the seriousness of the injury will be identified by the senior medical officer of the event and declared as a critical incident by the clerk of course. All work at the incident site will cease except for response to the injury, fire or other immediate danger. So we're to consider the scene as a crime scene. Do not move vehicles or clean the site. So incident types, there's 3 incident types: a motorsport incident, a medical alert, and a critical injury. And we'll go through those 3 now. A motorsport incident is an unusual or unplanned event of significance which occurs as a direct result of motorsport activity or affects the safety of any person engaged in activity or exposes any deficiency in safety procedures or facilities. Continuing on with incident type number 2 is a medical alert. An incident or situation at the venue which has not been declared as a critical incident, but which requires the concentrated focus of the medical team on a response which may escalate into a critical incident. An incident type number 3 is an incident or situation throughout the venue which is or in danger of becoming a medically life-threatening. Like we saw at Morgan Park a few weeks ago. So critical incident response forms a part of function of officials have to perform at an event, but it is one that attracts a great deal of scrutiny, accolade, and criticism. The impact on people and an event can be significant. And now I will hand over to Paul Overall.
Okay.
It's me.
Sorry.
Sorry, folks, it's Mal here. Okay, so the motorsport incident coordinator. Sorry, guys, technical. Okay, so the Motorsport Incident Coordinator is a senior official, clerk of course, or deputy or assistant, appointed to the role prior to the event. The role is to coordinate the overall and formal response to the incident. The person liaises with the clerk, of course, and the Motorsport Incident Controller. We'll talk about that person shortly. Identify an incident control centre, normally race control event headquarters. In rally terms, it's the command centre, but usually the place where the event's being run. Notify the civil authorities, the police, ambulance, and other emergency services. And commence documenting response and coordination activities using the critical incident response chart. And collate all documents relating to the incident, licenses, entry forms, officials' reports, etc. The comment here is the Motorsport Incident Coordinator will have a close relationship with the event secretary, because that's the person who will have all this information. Continuing on, assist the stewards and the police to collect the information they require. Liaise with the senior event personnel, the promoter, the circuit, the property owner, and so on. Notify WorkSafe, relevant work cover authorities, and of course, Motorsport Australia. Security requirements, vehicle impoundment. Liaise with peer support, officials coordinator, the chaplain, the chief marshal. And collate and complete all documentation required and pass on to the Motorsport Australia and police if required or appropriate. So the critical incident controller, this is the next person. This is the person that actually goes out to the scene of the incident. Appointed prior to the event by the clerk, of course, to take charge of an incident scene. Directs the response at the incident site. Liaises with the Motorsport Incident Coordinator and the stewards. Controls all movement of marshals at the scene. Stops cleanup work, except response to fire and injury. The incident scene is to be isolated and evidence of the incident protected from contamination, except for safety and protection of casualties. Continuing on. Request police to attend the incident scene via the clerk, of course, and the incident coordinator. Confirm the identity of the casualties and any deaths direct with the doctor. Investigate the accident as a Motorsport Australia representative as directed. Assist the civil authorities at the incident site, collecting measurements, photos, witness details, etc., for any subsequent investigation. And at conclusion, rehabilitate the scene to commence and enable competition to resume. Obviously, that last point is debatable about where it is. If it's a motor racing circuit, quite possible. At a rally, might not be possible. Okay, this is an incident that happened in 2013.
Can we just pause for a second? We've got a couple of questions relevant to earlier. So one of the questions is, why don't we have a separate person who scribes or writes down all information and timeline of an incident?
We do. At circuit race, we have a person that's writing a race log all the time. And at rally headquarters, you've got people keeping a log of incidents.
And Another question is, what is the definition of venue for the purpose of rallying, tarmac or gravel?
The course, the entire course, plus your headquarters
Service
area,
park.
your service parks, your parc ferme area, anywhere where the competition vehicles or the officials may be.
Right, to continue on. At a rally or an off-road incident, the incident may cover a larger area than a circuit incident, where the accident scene is usually contained within the barriers. This particular incident happened in 2013, and clearly on the bottom photo you can see that it was quite devastating. The top photo, it does give an example of what the incident controller will be looking for and trying to protect the incident scene. In this particular photo, you can vaguely see some tyre marks that went off to the right-hand side, approximately where that gentleman is standing, and the vehicle ended up a little bit further along past the fire engine. So protecting the incident scene, I was sent out to this particular incident and I drove straight up behind the fire engine, which was wrong because you're trying to protect the scene. So yeah, the area may be quite large depending on whether it's an off-road event or rally or indeed a circuit racing.
Can I just go back to that previous
Yes,
slide?
by all means.
It's Dave Wood. You'll see that the official in the green vest, you can see there in the left-hand top there, that distance that the tyre marks, that was from the crest to that first point of impact was 70 metres. So if you look at that, so it's a fair lump of an area that you've got to guard and protect the sort of any evidence or stuff like that in that area there. So just be aware, and what we're trying to do is say to people, it happens over like also in places like Bathurst, where the cars, say, coming down through Caltex Chase there, some of the accidents you see are spread out over at least 150 metres, something like that. So just be aware of that. You need to protect at some large areas. It's not always confined between the Armco or the circuit. Right, thanks.
Thanks, Dave. One of the things that we've put together is a list of the critical incident kit. The kit would be carried by the Motorsport incident controller and would take the kit with him or her to an incident site. You can see there we've listed the contents of the critical incident kit, simple things that you can get off the Motorsport Australia website. A lot of the items off to Bunnings and pick them up. It's not hard to actually purchase all these things and put it together so that the critical incident controller has these things with them. The folder containing a copy of the Motorsport Australia Critical Incident Response Procedures, blank incident forms, blank lined paper and a pen, a notebook and additional pens and paper. All of the things you'll need when you're taking the notes, you're taking the measurements, you're writing down the findings of what you've come across at the incident scene. A measuring tape, minimum of 10 metres. In my case, I've got a wheel, so you've got an infinite distance. The camera, everyone's got a digital camera within their phone, but it can be a good idea to actually have an inexpensive camera to take with you. Indelible marking crayons and chalks, so that you can mark out items that you find. Barrier tape, we say there are a minimum of 2 roles. This is obviously to cordon off the area. Disposable coveralls, plastic goggles, face masks, hand wipes, rubber gloves, all the things you'll need to protect yourself from what you may find, dirt, dust, whatever. The rigger's style gloves, reflective vest. As an incident controller or any senior official, you should have a reflective tabard in any case, but a reflective vest and a small tarpaulin. They're the things that you should have, and pretty easy to pick up at Bunnings or off the Motorsport website. Over to you.
Can we just go back to the camera? Where you're looking at with your camera, I know everybody's got a mobile phone these days, but the normal, if you've got a little portable camera or something like that, if you've got one of that, make sure that the batteries that you've, it's fully charged. Make sure and look at things like the date. Make sure that the date is correct. I personally borrowed a camera at an event I was at, and when I took all the photos, it was the previous day, so I was taking photos before the accident started. But it's a bit difficult to take photos and show them to the police or to the coroner if they're taken the day before the accident, sort of thing. So make sure that you look at these sort of things. The forms that you are looking at, you will find them, and we will show you where to get them off the CAMS website. But they're just little things that just make sure that you've got, you're happy, and prepare the kit before you go out. If you use the kit, make sure that you replace stuff the next time you want to use it. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Dave. One of the things that comes to mind when we talk about the folder containing a copy of the Motorsport Australia Critical Incident Response Procedures and the blank incident report forms, one of the things that I've done is I've printed them out and laminated them, so I can write on the laminated surface, and if it rains, they don't get damaged. So you've got a better chance of protecting your documents if the weather turns sour on you. Next screen. Okay, so the Motorsport Critical Incident Response Forms. Cam, are you going to take us to it? I'll hand over to Cam on this one. He's driving the computer.
So just taking you to where you can find these forms on the website. The critical incident briefing notes. I'm sure most of you will have seen these over time, but they're found under they're found on the website under
Officials resources.
Under officials resources, and also now on the forms index. You can find the critical incident response documents as well.
Just getting out. Just explain on this one.
No,
They
you
can
talk.
with the form with the key personnel, you can if you've been nominated as the controller or the coordinator, between the two of you, you could probably preload some of this stuff onto it. You'll know who the chief scrutineer is, the stewards and stuff like that. So just, make it a little bit easier for when you get out onto site. You'll need to have, and what I personally do, if I'm the controller
It stopped working.
in a rally, I tend to well, I go to the local police station prior to the event going, introduce myself to the local policeman on site and say, and explain who I am or what my role is. So if you're unfortunate enough to have it, then at least he's not coming out. He's not looking for somebody running around, and we know exactly who's on site. But just be aware, just make things as easy as you can for yourself, but within the regulations and stuff like this. Thanks.
Apparently, I think on the webinar, you're not seeing the pages we're going to. So very sorry about that. You will find the above forms on the forms index now on the Motorsport Australia webpage. It's on the very left-hand side. If you click on there, you'll find forms index. Usually next we would talk to you about crash tag and take you to the crash tag website, but that appears not to be working this evening on either. So
We'll talk about that.
so crash tag itself is a fairly new resource for all of us to use. It's been developed in conjunction with AIMS to log incidents worldwide in motorsport. It has become, through about the third iteration, it's become quite a user-friendly document. You can take photos, do all your incident reports online. You can also use it offline in rally and off-road. Dave, would you like to add something about crash tag?
Yeah, just
guys, sorry if I can just jump in here. You can actually share the screen that's on your web browser. So if you close down the shared screen that you've got now and then share the screen where you've got your web browser open, the participants will be able to see all of the sites.
Oh, that's good.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd scroll down and we can go through that. Don't be afraid to use crash tag. It looks complicated when you first start, but it isn't. But it does have a lot of information that you can do. The people who organise it, it was designed here in Australia, and it is run by the AIMS people, and they are always available to ask questions. If you're going to an event as a scrutineer or as a crash coordinator, if you let them know prior to the event, they will send you a link where you can have, you'll come on to go into crash tag in the particular parts that you can do it. It covers not only the administrative side where it says what sort of car and all that type of thing, but it also covers a medical report as a medic, and also down into scrutineering and stuff like this. So please, guys, use it, make yourself familiar with it, because it is a really handy piece of gear. You can go back 6 months later if you want to add a couple of photographs or check what you wrote on that. So it's something that we should put into use and use it as a tool rather than thinking it's a hindrance to us. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Paul O'Rell here. My topic is managing the stress management situation. So there are a couple of things that we need to keep our mind and our eyes on while things are happening after the incident. We need to do 4 things. We need to look. Oh, sorry, there's 2 of us doing the same thing here. We need to look, listen, act, and link. And if you bear with me, we'll run through those 4 things. And it's probably a good idea if you're out there and you've got a pen and paper handy, make some notes about this, because it'll come in handy for anything that you do, whether it be at a motorsport event, something that happens anywhere in your life, and somebody gets affected by a traumatic experience. So on the subject of look around you. Who appears to be injured? That's fairly obvious. Who appears to be visibly upset? Because if you're involved in circuit racing, you're going to have an ambulance and a doctor there fairly quickly. If you're involved in rally off-road, that might be a longer wait. But if the injured people are being looked after, who's upset? Are the people in the crowd who are upset? Are some of your fellow marshals upset by the whole thing? And do they need some assistance? You know, you could have a marshal that's having a mild heart attack or something like that, in addition to the person that was involved in the competition accident. So just keep all that in mind. Listen actively to what people are saying. What does that person want immediately? Do they want help, to be left alone? Do they want a bottle of water? Do they want to go home? Do they want their mummy? All of these things are signs to you that they're having some stressful reaction. So just pay attention to all of these things. And then act. What does the person want you to do for them? What can you do for them? Do they want you to help them contact their loved ones, you know, their partner, their mum, whatever it may be? Do they want a change of clothing because they're covered in dirt and muck or blood? And then after you've attended to these things, check in on that person later to see how they're doing. Not 10 minutes later, but in the following days after the event, after the incident, because some people can bottle these things up for quite some time and it doesn't show immediately. So look around, see what's going on, listen to what people are saying. You know, everybody puts on the, not everybody, but a large number of people put on the brave face, I'm okay. And sometimes they're not. That's just the facade that they put up. Act. What can you do for them? Can you help in any way at all? And a small thing such as offering them some water so they can wash their hands or wash something off themselves means a hell of a lot in a situation like that. And the last thing is link. And link that person to the appropriate support. And Motorsport Australia has great support. We've got chaplains who, the name is generally, most people seem to think that it's to do with religion, but it's not. These folk, and if you have ever dealt with them, you'll know that they don't push religion of any persuasion down your throat. They're there to help, offer support and offer guidance. And they can also link you to other people in the outside world. You may require some more specialised assistance, and these folks know all the people to contact. Talk to your senior marshals, talk to the circuit doctor, the event doctor, and get some guidance from those folks as to how things can be better managed. So how do we reduce the impact of critical stress at the scene during and after the emergency? Let's talk about the individual for a starter. And that's, we're now talking about the officials, not the competitor or the spectator that's injured. Tell a supervisor if you're feeling stressed. It's no good trying to soldier on if you're only working at 30, 50%. destage in small segments. So in other words, wind back from the whole thing. Keep busy and do something. And one of the best things to do is start making some notes, because those notes will become essential down the road. The incident coordinator and the incident controller will ask you for a report. And if you've made some notes of things that you saw, that will help at that point of time. And disengage from non-essential people. You'll always get people asking you what happened and things like that. Just don't get involved in that sort of thing. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to your senior officials. Otherwise, just start keeping yourself busy and destaging from the whole exercise. If you're a team leader on a service point, on a control, a rally control, on a flag point at a circuit, look after your team and rotate your workers. Make sure that they're getting a break, because sometimes these things can drag on for hours. I was involved with an incident at the Grand Prix where a marshal lost his life, and that happened mid-afternoon, and we didn't leave the actual incident scene for 5 or 6 hours. The one that Mal was talking about before in the rally, that dragged on until the dark.
And then the day after.
And the day after.
Yeah.
So nobody is expecting anybody to put in a marathon effort. Just make sure that you're there, you're putting in what you can, but don't overdo it, and make sure nobody else overdoes it. If you're feeling unwell, or if you are injured, and let's face it, if you're at a circuit, there's a chance that you can end up copping some of the shrapnel that goes around when it all goes wrong. So withdraw at that point of time. Triage your workers. If you're a team leader, sort out the task, sort out who's best suited to it. The novice kid is not the person you're going to want doing the hard stuff. But you can say to them, why don't you go and get some bottles of water and look after the rest of the team with that? And they'll be happy to help. Consume healthy refreshments. That's fairly obvious, but a lot of people go, geez, I could do with a scotch or I could do with a beer now. Now is not the time for that sort of thing. But by the same token, make sure you keep your fluids up, and if possible, you get some food into you, some nourishment of some sort. So how do we reduce the impact of post-traumatic stress after the emergency? Pardon me. Attend a defusing and debriefing session, and that'll be organised by the clerk of course, the event secretary, the promoting body, whoever that may be. And don't say, no, I don't need to attend that, because you may have the one piece of critical information that everybody needs to work out exactly where it all went wrong. Do some physical exercise. And if you're like me and you don't do a lot of physical exercise, well, it doesn't have to be a lot. Go for a walk around the block, or in my case, a walk out to the clothesline. And just keep yourself active, and don't lock yourself away. Eat and drink healthy products, fairly obvious. Something that the males in the room generally don't do. Talk and express your emotions openly. If you're upset, let somebody know about it. Keep a journal or a diary. And that comes in handy if the sign of stress comes back in a couple of days. Because then if you end up talking to a professional person, you've got some history to show them as to what happened. Reduce your alcohol, caffeine, tobacco, and obviously don't take non-prescription drugs. and this is a key one, this one, accept that flashbacks and dreams associated with the incident or something like the incident are normal. It doesn't mean that you are abnormal or that there is anything wrong with what's going on. That's all a part of the process. Control any morbid thoughts. Don't start thinking about, well, if only I had done something better, that may not have happened. What has happened is what's happened. Talk to your motorsport chaplain, your friends, your family, and if you're fortunate enough to have a Motorsport Australia mentor, talk to that person too, because they may have been down a similar path, or at least have a better knowledge of the pathway that you're about to travel down. Any questions from that? No?
We've had a few coming through, not specifically for that
Okay.
segment.
Anything we should answer now?
Yeah, we can. We can do this one live. While a lot of these incidents happen, Gordon Boyce has asked, while a lot of these incidents happen at major events where there's a large number of officials, how do we manage the process at a club level motorsport event? For example, a circuit sprint, motorcar, etc., where there may only be a few officials for the event.
That's a good question. I was at an event only a couple of weeks ago, and I said to the people that were running it, who's our emergency controller? And they said, oh, that'll be the ambulance guy. And I went, it sounds as though that might be me. So, yeah, a small number of people means that more people carry the workload, but that doesn't mean that there is a change in how we manage the whole situation. We still need to have somebody doing all of that paperwork that we looked at before, which looks daunting, but when you actually work your way through it, it's quite logical. And a lot of it is almost spoon-fed. And if we follow the pathway, and we'll get to that in a couple of seconds' time, if we follow the pathway that's in all the paperwork from Motorsport Australia, you'll find that dealing with the police, and if you have to go to a coroner, that everything is a lot easier and more straightforward. So I know I didn't answer the question as in this person does that and that person does this, but I think that needs to be managed by whoever is the clerk of course, and whoever takes on the role of clerk of course and or event secretary at club events of a small number of competitors and an even smaller number of officials needs to bear in mind that these things can happen. We had a traffic accident in Brisbane not that long ago where somebody fell off a push bike and died. And they weren't hit by anybody. They just simply went around the corner and fell off the push bike and died. So speed does not have to be very high for something to go wrong. And everybody goes, oh, well, it's only a club event. We don't need to worry about these things. I'm terribly sorry, but these things can happen anywhere at any time. I'm now going to briefly touch on the legal process and how Motorsport Australia can assist if necessary. So a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Keep your notes and photos and keep them for a long time, years and years and years. Because once the police finish with it, they may refer it to a coroner. The coroner may refer it to another court, or somebody involved in the whole exercise, a family member of somebody that was involved, may take it to a civil court. And you may be called upon to give evidence or to pass a comment. So keep all your documents in a little box or in a file somewhere where you can find them if necessary. Do not offer comments to the media or other parties. Motorsport Australia has a media department, and going back to the earlier part of the day where we were talking about the incident coordinator, one of their jobs is to notify Motorsport Australia that we've had this type of incident. That will start the wheels turning in Motorsport Australia, and the media department will start sending out information. From personal experience, I can say that doesn't always work ideally, because the incident at the Grand Prix some years ago mentioned a 50-year-old Queenslander had died at the event, and I happened to be a 50-year-old Queenslander who was attending the event on that weekend. So my wife, my kids, and my boss all suddenly started fielding a whole lot of phone calls. But however, that was a heck of a lot better than naming the individual in the press before anybody had been notified.
One of the questions Ross Forbes has asked, keeping documents, is it the same as government statutory regulation of 7 years?
That would be the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be the absolute minimum. I've got stuff that goes back much longer than that.
Scott Baker has asked, what are the requirements of an official to perform the incident controller role?
Could you just, sorry, that would be a senior official, and it needs to be somebody who is capable of dealing with the situation that presents itself, because it may well be a pretty gory situation. So yeah, it's not something I would be volunteering for unless you had a fair bit of experience. Any more?
Keep going.
Okay. One of my favourite topics, do not post comments or images on social media platforms. I know that we all see on YouTube, world's biggest rally crash, world's biggest drag racing crash. Wow, wait until you see this. All of those sorts of comments hang around things. Don't become one of those people, because you post an image of a car doing whatever has happened. And if the family of the competitor have not been informed, it all goes horribly wrong in a big rush, because somebody identifies the car and they ring Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so and say, oh, we saw that your family car was involved in that big accident. And they're all at the shops or having a cup of coffee or sitting at home watching the footy or something, and they go, I don't know what you're talking about. And all of a sudden they're having a heart attack at home, in addition to their family member having their own problems at a motorsport event. A classic example of that I often mention is some years ago, a Qantas jet took off from, I think it was Hong Kong, and an engine cover fell off that jet. And somebody took a photograph of the piece falling off the plane and stuck it on social media. At Qantas headquarters in Melbourne, somebody started wondering why their share price had taken a plummet within minutes. And it was only when they got the report, maybe 20 minutes later, that something had happened to one of their aircraft, that they were able to put the two together. So that shows you the power of social media and the speed with which something can spread and potentially paint the wrong picture. In that particular case, the aircraft landed and no harm was done. But the reaction around the world was, oh, Qantas is going to lose a plane and lose their record of never having crashed. So yeah, don't stick things on social media, and don't offer comments. Leave that to the people who are paid to do it and who can then field all the questions at the right time. If you're summoned to appear at a court, whether it be a court, a normal court, a civil court, or a coroner's court, contact Motorsport Australia. Motorsport Australia will provide some legal support and advice. And quite often, they will actually send somebody along with you to attend that court hearing, whatever it may be. If you've ever been unfortunate enough to have attended a coroner's court, and I have, be assured it's not like on TV where you just sit there and glibly answer questions. It's a hard process, and by the time you finish in the box, which might only be 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you will swear that you're the next guy to be hung for whatever went wrong. So keep your notes and your photos and have all of that with you, and contact Motorsport Australia if you get a summons or asked by, say, the family of the competitor or the person that was injured. Okay.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Does Motorsport Australia have a critical incident procedure or document specific to media? That might be one for David Morrie to answer.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I might jump in on this one here. So it doesn't actually have a document that is specific to media. However, there are elements of the critical incident documents, procedures and processes that advise you that all communication in response to a critical incident goes through Motorsport Australia. So the key element of the Motorsport Australia response is the management of all communications to the media and other sources as relevant. No one from the event should provide any statement or information in relation to the incident at all. So if you are at an event and approached by media to that ask a question, you're basically not to answer that. You refer them back to Motorsport Australia, who obviously have legal counsel in place to answer those questions for you, but there isn't a specific policy just for media.
Thanks, Dave.
We've got a question online from Glenn Rochester. If the case is contested, you can't use your notes while in the stand. If it's a hearing, apparently you can. So those have...
Well, the police refer to their notes and their notebook, and that then gets tendered as evidence, but you can still refer to them, yeah. No, the worst thing you can do is start relying on your memory, because over the years, and these things, nothing goes to trial within 60 minutes as it does on television. It takes years for these things to go to court. So that's why I say hang on to your notes. Sorry, but you had another question.
All good.
All good? Okay. Dave Wood.
All right, if I could just... In summary, don't be caught out by an incident. Pre-plan what to do and what with your team if something happens. Very important. What you should be doing, or you should look at it, if you've been selected or as a clerk of course or something like that, organising an event, you should pre-plan the way you're going to handle the accident by selecting people, the clerk of control, the incident controller, and the incident coordinator. They should be in on the when you do your pre-planning, if you sort of include them into your organising committee type of thing. We, rather than then sort of just select them, and when you do select the people, make sure, as Paul said earlier, make sure that they're capable of doing it. You don't want to throw an 18-year-old into a critical incident or something like that. So be aware that you need to look at the person that you're selecting, and do you feel that he or she has got the qualifications to fill that role? I think, and as Paul said, you would like to think that nobody under a silver level official would be picked for it. That's for now. Also, when we go to how long do you have to keep photographs and all this and that, as Paul said, you got to keep them for years. Accidents you do not happen, or cannot wait. What happened there? So sorry about that. Yeah, accidents, to do the resolve are not resolved in 5 minutes or something like that. The accident at Impound in 2013, I physically was still working on it at least 8 months later. I was involved in the investigation where we took the car apart, or we had to take it apart for us to establish what was going on. The police will impound the vehicle, and then they will release, and you will not get it as an official until after their part of the investigation is finished. And then Motorsport Australia get their go at finding out what happens to it. But you need to do it in detail. You look at, we took something like 250 odd photographs of the car, and it took us something like about 7 hours to actually get the car to a position where we could get all those photographs. So just be aware that it's not a 5-minute job. If you're selected, it doesn't just finish at the end of the event. It will go on for quite some time. So just be aware of those sort of things. And also, not all critical incidents and not all deaths in motorsport will go to the coroner's court. The coroner will determine if he has enough information. So make your reports detailed and to the point. They will then look at that, and they will then decide whether it requires a coroner to do it, or else they will put it down with all the information that Motorsport Australia, and we're very good at providing all that information. They will then say they're listed as a motorsport incident or accident, and that will be the end of it, sort of thing. But just be aware that not always do we finish up at the coroner to do that. All right, so don't be caught out by an incident. Plan what next one. Bear with us, guys. We're having technical communication. There we go. Yeah. Oh, all right. All right. Observe the incident, but protect yourself. Remember, before you go and help somebody else, make sure that you're in a safe position and you are protected in that. Once you've done that and you're happy with that, then certainly as quick as you can start organising and helping the person in the incident if that's what happens. But always make sure that you protect yourself first before you proceed with helping somebody else. If required, assist fellow officials, then the competitors, and only if qualified to do so. If you're not a medic, don't start trying to put a trachea in and stuff like this. just do what you can, what a reasonable person would do in this case. Make notes, as we said earlier, make notes, write reports. You can make copious notes if you do them, and as it was mentioned, keep them for future references if you need to go back to them and look at them, and do not do not rely on your memory, because memories and things like that change over a period of time. You write your report, make them clear and concise, make them readable, because you'll be handing these reports into your event secretary or somebody like that for transcribing, if necessary, onto official documentation. Use with crash tag, and once again, use crash tag. It's not compulsory at this stage to do it, but it's certainly recommended from Motorsport Australia that we use this method, or this as an added part to your reporting. Once again, you can add, if you think about something, you put a report in, you can go back in 6 months' time and you can add to that report. So it's not just something that happens now, but if you suddenly remember something, you think, gee, I should have put that into my report, you can pull up your report and add to it. With crash tag, once it's done, we ask what happens to it. Once it's downloaded, it goes to the World Accident Bank, which Australia is a part of it, which is run by the FIA, and it allows other people to sort of see what's happening and how we're attending and doing stuff with accidents. System Motorsport Incident Controller. Once again, if you can see he needs a hand, get in there and give him a hand. Ask him, can you do something for him? If you're selected as the incident controller and you're looking for somebody that you want to give you a hand, select the person wisely. Don't, once again, getting back, you don't want to take an 18-year-old out to somebody that's trapped in the car or something like this. So be that, but also be aware that we should give them as much help as what we can. Help rehabilitate the scene, and this probably more so in a circuit race, because in lots of cases, sometimes we can get the event going again. In a rally or an off-road event, it's probably a little bit more difficult because you don't have the people. In a circuit, you have flag marshals, you have people like that there, but in a off-road event or a rally, you've got people that could be 10 or 12 kilometres away. But if it's done, just rehabilitate, do what you can. Remove the stuff off the circuit, stuff like this. Don't make comments about the incident to others, media, etc. Just as something that happened at the accident that I was involved in, we actually had the media drop off a cameraman and he walked into the site. He only got within about 300 metres of the site before we realised who he was, and we told him he's got to leave. But on the same token, the next day, the media rang up the clerk of course and offered to sell the event, the footage from the accident that they had taken from a helicopter above. That's how they make their money, guys. Don't help them. And probably the very important, ensure that you have a hot debrief is held and stand down people if required. Even if you just ask them how they're going, things like this, just make them as comfortable as what you can do. And so they know that if they've got a question or they're feeling down, then they can ask for some help. But certainly do a debrief, which is the ideal thing to do. And resume competition again and enjoy. That's, as I said, that might happen at a circuit race. Sometimes it does happen at rallies where you can isolate the stage and you can transfer people across. I think it's probably a bit difficult on a off-road event to do something like that. And I've got a guy sitting beside me shaking his head and he's saying yes. Yeah, so certainly in a circuit race you could be able to do it, but at rallies and off-road, it's just a little bit more difficult to do so. Right. Questions?
So I'll zoom out a little bit here.
I've got just, if you don't mind, or stop sharing your screen. I just want to. We've had a couple of. Not allowed to. I can't share my video. However, we've got a couple of questions or comments coming through. One from Stacey Painter. As a scrutineer, I was involved with the reporting of a critical incident and supervision of the vehicle a few years ago, sorry. Although I'm aware of the dangers of motorsport, this is something, as an experienced bronze scrutineer, that I was ill prepared for. Is it something that can be added to the bronze scrutineer's course or left for discussion while mentoring? Just below that, we've also got Motorsport Australia would ultimately gather and keep all paperwork in one place after an event. So should an individual's notes, which could be added to or changed, bear that much weight, post-event odds and ends, pieces of paperwork may just confuse everyone. And they're two really interesting points, both from Stacey and Mandy. I'm going to share my screen and show you the actual critical incident response plan, because hopefully many of you have never had to see it before. And this is why we generally like to allocate an incident coordinator and an incident controller. Now you can see the critical incident response plan. Can you, Dave and Paul?
Yes, can, yep.
Lovely. That means our participants can as well. The critical incident response plan, which is available under the officials resources tab on the Motorsport Australia website, is actually a really simple document to follow. And as long as you've got the right people doing the right role and have a plan before commencing the event, it's a really clinical way and a clinical process of dealing with a critical incident. Everyone has a role. That role is overseen by the critical incident coordinator, generally being the clerk of the course, and more often than not the secretary of the event. But it goes through in stages what is expected of everybody, whose responsibility it is, and it's almost like a checklist. So I would invite you all that are part of this webinar to actually go online and have a look through the critical incident documents that we have. It's only 2 documents. They're really easy to follow, and it actually it's just a step-by-step guide that takes you through it. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you can see how it's structured and how easy it is to actually address a critical incident and follow the correct procedure.
Dave, can I just interrupt, or not interrupt you, but just, and we haven't mentioned it, but when you go as the controller or as the coordinator also, don't forget that we've got to advise the workplace health and safety people these days at accident. What we do in Queensland, and they must be advised. It's like bringing your policeman down. You bring the WorkSafe guy down, and they go through it also. So just be aware that it's not only the police from the civil side; it's the workplace safety guy as well. All right, thanks.
Guys, we've also had a question from John. John from Queensland. I was involved with Ashley Cooper and Paul Redisich's crashes. How do you politely tell spectators also what to do when they witness such things? And Paul, you may be a great one to answer this, considering you've been involved in them as well.
Yeah, it's awkward because especially spectators at Bathurst are generally a little bit better lubricated than some other places because they've been there for a couple of days sometimes. And they frustrate you. They keep offering advice or comments or criticism, all of which is based on a certain amount of alcohol and a certain amount of ignorance. And sometimes they're just showing off to their mates. That's one of the reasons why we say in the incident controller's kit to have a tarpaulin. We found with the incident at the Grand Prix where the marshal got killed, once we covered the cars up, the people went away because there was nothing to see. Now, you can, once with the Cooper incident, once the car was loaded and went away, all the comments stopped. But of course, it takes a while sometimes because you have to leave the car in situation to record where it is and distances and things like that. Yeah, dealing with the public is never easy. All you can do is, and I always say to people, the first thing you do when you approach the public, no matter how cheesed off you are, is smile at them and sort of say, look, I'm terribly sorry, but. So you've been friendly and you're apologising, and then you sink the boot in. And that's about all I can say. I sympathise with you because I've been in that situation. And yeah, maybe I didn't handle it as well as I should have either. But yeah, that's the way it is. And especially at something like that where there's just, and they feed off each other. That's part of the problem, I find.
So Gordon Boyce has asked, what and when is it determined that we need to contact Safe Work, Work Cover, etc. if the serious injury is to a competitor, not a volunteer or official or spectator?
Same thing. They're all one and the same.
Yeah.
It's a bit like if somebody walks into David Jones and something falls on their head, you can't say, oh, well, they're not a staff member, we won't worry about it. It's somebody that's been injured at your place, so therefore it needs to be reported.
No, I think
a serious injury we're talking about here, not where they've banged their head or they've fallen over and grazed their knee.
And I think we covered that early in the piece where in an incident at an event, and it can be anybody at the event. As Paul said, it could be officials, it could be the competitor, it could be anybody, but that's covered by just everybody is treated the same at a critical incident.
Guys, we've got an interesting one from Kevin here. So why such a knock on young officials? We were all young once, met many bronze and general officials with way more trust and brains than many silvers over the past 26 years of officiating. And look, I do appreciate your comment there, Kevin, I really do. certainly not knocking any young officials. There are many bright minds out there. And I think what we might be relating to is when it was mentioned throughout the webinar that the preference is to have a silver official as the incident controller. In some cases that's possible, in some cases it's not. And I would certainly not discourage clubs from utilising some of their younger officials in those roles. It's not mandated that it must be a silver official. It should be somebody that can competently follow instruction, protect a scene, lead a team, and be able to deal with the emotion of what they're seeing. And sometimes we find that younger people may not be able to deal with what they're seeing. Some of the scenes can be quite horrific. And obviously we certainly don't want to expose young minds to that. So certainly not limited to silver officials only, but obviously you would expect somebody that has experience at a silver level may be able to deal with those situations in a more effective way.
If I can just add to that, Dave, two things. The trauma of one of these things can be quite significant, and not just the accident, but if there is an injury that's causing a lot of distress to whoever's been injured, that can be quite traumatic. And that's something that can impact on a younger person, sometimes more intensely than on a more mature person who may have some more life experience, is probably what I'm trying to get at. And the other one is that some years ago we had a fire crew at a circuit where they wanted their young children in the fire truck with them, and they said, oh, they'll always be in the truck. And I went, well, that's all well and good until you get a driver trapped in the car that's on fire and you park your truck behind it. And the kids have got to listen to whatever's going on. So, yeah, the trauma of these things is not over in a blink like it is in the movies. It sometimes can drag on for quite some time.
Thank you for that, Paul. So really good one, really good question from Samantha Winter. Who has the authority to make the decision to cancel an event in a rally situation, for example, and what is taken into account when doing so?
Gosh.
I can start this if you want, Paul.
Yeah.
Only the stewards at an event have the authority to cancel an event. A stage, course, a circuit race. Generally, when it's safety related, so what's taken into account is safety, and obviously, if a critical incident has resulted in damage to a wall, a stage, whatever it may be, the stewards may be required under force majeure to either close the stage or cancel the event. But only the stewards have that authority.
Further to what Dave just said, if there has been a fatality, the police will declare the scene to be a crime scene. It doesn't mean a crime has been committed, but a fatality needs to be investigated. And until they're satisfied that there is no crime, they treat the scene as a crime scene. And so the whole thing is stopped for quite some period of time. And that can sometimes impact on whether your event's going to carry on or not. And again, that's a matter of the incident controller, the incident coordinator, the event secretary, the clerk of course, and the statutory authorities, all dealing with the stewards to say, and in the case of the police, this is what we want. And generally, if they say they don't want anybody going down that road or using that particular part of the course, that's generally where it all stops.
If I may add to that, reflecting on the situation in 2013 with the photos that we showed you, That particular stage was able to be isolated, so that stage was stopped. As Dave said, the investigation was still going the next day and further on, but we were able to continue the event. So I think we had 4 stages, so we had 3 running actively, so we could complete the event. But obviously with force majeure, because we lost a stage and we lost that distance. So yeah, decisions are hard, but in that case, there was no decision to be made. There was a fatality and that stage had to stop. That's all.
Question from Terence Scully, makes a good point. Why is the critical incident controller not listed on the Supregs as an essential official? Would that not help officials and stewards to seek out that person rather than walking around blindly?
Cool. That's a question for Motorsport Australia to answer, because they list the essential officials, not us. You're on mute, Dave.
I do apologise. I was actually typing a response to somebody then from another question. So what was the question again, Nigel?
From Terry Scully. Why is the critical incident controller not listed on the Supregs as an essential official? Would that not help officials and stewards to seek out that person rather than walking around blindly?
Yep, that's a good observation, Terence. And look, it isn't part of our current permits form. However, it is something that may be adopted in the near future as we are constantly reviewing our forms and their effectiveness. So that's certainly been noted, and we'll bring that up with my seniors to see whether it will be adopted.
We had that question.
We've had a question from Melissa via John. What's advice on helping out your partner to deal with an incident away from the track?
Oh, okay. So your partner's been involved in an incident at an event, and now he's come home. Yep. That's where the motorsport chaplains come into play. And even if they're just on the telephone, they can offer a lot of advice on how to manage any stress or trauma that may be going through. But you may need to go to seek professional help, and that might be your local doctor or somewhere else. But yeah, the motorsport chaplain is definitely a good place to start, and other senior officials, if you are friends with them, they may be able to offer some advice too.
I can attest to the support of our motorsport chaplains. They're a fabulous resource and can actually help you in day-to-day life issues as well, not just motorsport related. They're an amazing group of volunteers that are just continuously there for you. So don't be afraid to reach out to them.
Somebody asked a question before about the incident controller. This module was always a part of the silver module. It was never initially aimed at bronze or general licensed officials. And it's only because we found that there's a demand for people just to know what's involved. Not that they want to be involved, but they just want to know how such things are managed, that we've opened this up to the couple of hundred people that are on at the moment, and the 100 or so that we've already delivered this to face-to-face.
Braden Fawcett has asked, hi, I'm an incident controller for one specific event each year. Is it Motorsport Australia's expectation or requirement that they should upgrade their licence to a silver circuit from a bronze circuit?
We're all looking at Dave here.
And
he's on mute.
And he's
You're all looking at me, and again, I was typing a response to another question. Nigel, please repeat the question.
And I've just disappeared. Hang on. So Braden has asked that they're an incident controller for one specific event each year. Is it Motorsport Australia's expectation or requirement that they should upgrade their license to a silver circuit from a bronze circuit?
Look, if it's something that that individual is continuously doing, then I would certainly encourage that individual to go through the process of upgrading to silver. Again, it's not mandatory to have the silver endorsement, and certainly at a club level of event, a silver license is not required for that. Bronze covers club and state level of events. But it's certainly a pathway that individual may wish to pursue.
So a follow-up question from Samantha with her closing of a stage in rally. For the follow-up is, what about the rest of the event? In what circumstances would the rest of the event be cancelled? It would depend on the incident.
It would depend on the incident.
If it's a fatality, it's not unusual to expect the event to be cancelled. If it's a world championship type event, sometimes they push on with those things.
So sort of following along that, Travis Conrad has asked, who has controlled jurisdiction of a major incident fatality, i.e. coroner, police, or the Motorsport Australia incident controller?
Police.
The police.
Always the police.
I would
police.
get the police, yeah.
Are the governing body at that point of time, because as I said, they regarded the scene as a crime scene, and that's why they don't want people walking down the road or across a gravel trap or straightening a fence or picking up debris or anything like that. And that's why the incident controller needs to be on top of all of this sort of stuff. And that's why we have the chalk and the paint and so forth to mark all the contact points and start stringing everything together so you can work out where this vehicle has gone or travelled, how often it touched the ground, and all of that sort of stuff is all pertinent to what they want. And in saying that, the documentation that we looked at before that Dave Morey showed us, if you fill that out correctly, a large number of the times, the coroner accepts that documentation with the police report, and quite often the police accept our documentation and do theirs from our paperwork, because we've gone down that road in the past, and our systems and our procedures are tested and found to be not wanting. And it generally satisfies most of the situations.
Our panel, we've just had a comment from Alan Evans. Plan, which I believe the critical incident plan requires that prior to the event, anyone with a role in the critical incident plan should meet prior to the commencement of that event. And that is a true statement, Alan.
Yep.
Any event you have, whether it be club level event or major national, restricted international with supercars, you should always get together with the key players of that event, have an emergency management meeting, go through what, if, when, how, why something like this would happen, and everybody's roles within that. Pre-planning is paramount to a better event and a safer event. So it should be something that is in our minds constantly. Planning.
At the Gold Coast, when it used to have IndyCars running, we used to have a pre-event critical incident meeting with ambulance, police, fire brigade, because we had high-rise buildings inside the complex, still do. And we went through incredible scenarios at those things. We did tabletop exercises of an F-111 doing a dump and burn and actually setting fire to something. Crazy, far out suggestions like that. And what would we do if a grandstand collapsed halfway through the race? All of those things we worked through, and it took us a good half day sometimes to sort it all out. But we all, at the end of it, we all identified each other. We knew who we all were. And so that if the event did turn bad, we all knew who to turn to and who was responsible for what. And at a club, you probably already know who to turn to and who's going to be responsible. But it doesn't hurt just to touch base and just say, here's our medical plan that we've submitted to Motorsport Australia. Are we all familiar with it? Are we all comfy with it? Is there anything we need to review for maybe the next event that we run?
I've got one from Stuart McCash. Has or will Motorsport Australia look at having a EAP, employee assistance provider, in the future? I know a lot of companies as well as government organisations have them. Stuart, I don't know whether Motorsport Australia have an EAP that is available to our members. And they certainly have one that is available to employees of Motorsport Australia. But I will certainly look into that for you and get back to you with a response on that. Okay, that looks like that's pretty much it as far as questions coming in. Thank you, Samantha, for writing. Thanks for the session tonight, gents. Very useful, appreciated. And certainly appreciate your feedback on tonight, Samantha. Okay, so Alan Evans has actually confirmed the EAP for us. So the EAP is available for all involved, including spectators that are affected. So thank you very much for responding to that, Alan. Okay, so just another question, Robert, might be if there is 2 vehicles in the initial involvement of the accident, but only one vehicle has major impact with a wall, etc., and the incident is deemed critical, should you impound both vehicles?
I would say yes.
I would say, yeah.
So Robert, it's very much like something that happens on the road with our civil authorities that attend the scene. So any vehicle that is involved in the scene would be impounded and inspected. Gentleman from Kim Bennett, valuable information, thank you. And thanks for your feedback, Kim, very much appreciated. Okay, so thank you very much for everybody that joined, for your insightful questions. Thank you to our panelists for presenting the information. Thank you again to Paul Reardon for putting this webinar together for us. And just to finish off, I'd like to remind everybody that we will make, or the recording of this will be available on the Motorsport Australia website over the coming days. You'll also receive a certificate of attendance for your participation in tonight's course. You'll also receive a participant handout, which will have all the information that was discussed tonight and more. So appreciate all of your time, and I hope you found tonight's webinar useful for you. Thanks very much, everybody.